Evaluation of cognitive approaches to second language learning, achievements and scope. So what are the main achievements of cognitive approaches to second language learning? The main achievement of cognitive approach to second language learning is the understanding of how language is processed in the minds of the second language learners. It has allowed us to develop certain models to understand how language-based information is processed in their minds and how do they retrieve it, use it, store it. So it has allowed us to come up with some models. Most of the times in several studies, computer-based models have been used to explain the phenomena, and more often than not, this relates to the learning of certain grammatical items. So the field of inquiry within which cognitive approaches have operated are the processing mechanisms of the learners, of the second language learners, and how do these mechanisms translate into the learning of the second language. Now, there are some approaches within this cognitive framework which focus only on what happens in the mind of the learners in terms of processing the information, as we discussed earlier. However, there are others that also embed within them some sense of this, there's some phenomena of which the universal grammar assumes and argues for, that is, this innate capability of language processing, and this innate capability of innate would mean something that is there in the minds of the learners that enables them to learn their first or second language more efficiently. So there are some who would agree with it and embed it within their frameworks. There are others which would move away from it, reject the idea, and only focus on the processes of language learning in the minds of the learners. And one example of this approach, which rejects the universal grammar principles, is the connectionist approach. For others, there are theories within cognitive approaches that cover the whole process of language learning. So they look at the structure of the language and they look at how it is processed. So they also believe that this division between a property theory, which looks at what is the structure of a language, and the transition theory, which looks at how a language is learned, they reject this division altogether and they try to understand the language learning process more holistically. They look at what are the challenges that are facing the second language learners, and then they look at how those challenges are dealt with by children and adult learners. There are other approaches also, so within them that might be focusing on children and might be focusing on adults only. But in any case, when all the approaches within the cognitive framework are focused only on what goes on in the mind of the learner. So even when they take in the structure of the language at times, they do not want to study language as such, but they want to see that what are the challenges that face the second language learner in terms of processing the information. However, it has to be kept in mind that cognitive approaches do not take into account the social factors of language learning. All the social context, all the social factors, whatever is happening around within which the language learning is embedded, is seen as information that is processed by the minds of the learners, and which is no different from any other information. So that is not given any salience or importance as such.